Hi, folks. Sorry I'm late. I was in a faculty meeting with a rather important imperative to deal with. So looks like we got a good number of folks here. We can get started, I suppose, and I'll just capture them as they straggle in. Okay, so today I really kind of wanted this to be a lab sort of experience, but let me just ask, how many of you had the opportunity to look over the Devil Wears Prada content? By show of icon, thumbs up icons. No one? Then let's plow through
I'm
it.
sorry, my audio wasn't connecting. What was the question?
I'm asking for, by show of hand icons or thumbs up, how many people have looked at the Devil Wears Prada content for today? And if nobody has, then I will go through it right now. Seems like, at least on my screen, I'm not seeing anyone indicating that they have looked over the content for today. So let's go through it together. And if you have, my apologies to you. This will probably feel redundant, but you're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to excuse yourself at this point if I'm going over something that you've already taken care of. I'm going to share my screen here, I think, and get the presentation going here for this afternoon.
Professor Welch, sorry, I was helping my roommate with something. What was the question again?
Just fall in and try to catch up. I'm moving forward with the Devil Wears Prada content for this afternoon. I've also got a little bit of something from Forrest Gump, just to sort of continue the conversation from Tuesday. I have another thought for you guys for today from Paul Oster, which is, when a person is lucky enough to live inside of a story, to live inside an imaginary world, the pains of this world disappear. For as long as the story goes on, reality no longer exists. Okay, that's that concept of the suspension of disbelief that I mentioned to you on Tuesday. And that's really, really important. I think that is first and foremost the objective of certainly the entertainment portion of our content creation. Whereas perhaps, there could be more nobler ambitions for documentaries and nonfiction film work of an informative nature. But certainly from the entertainment, the mass entertainment complex like Hollywood, what we're in the market of doing is basically entertaining and helping people forget about their problems for a while. And so the flourish and the color and the detail and the depth of creativity that you demonstrate in your work is all sort of part and parcel in working towards that objective. I want to talk about the opening few minutes of The Devil Wears Prada, because we're talking about world building. And in this case, I think this movie does a really amazing job of really showing the audience in a very short time who our protagonist is, the world that she is from, the world that she is sort of lured or drawn into, and then ultimately who her antagonist is going to be. And we do that, all of that in the first 10 pages of the script. So the first thing I want to do, I guess, is show you the written document. And then we can look at an analysis from Lessons of the Screenplay and see what Mike over there is talking about in terms of exposition. So I want to move to my, let's see, I should have my PDF of the script here somewhere. What did I do with it? Here we go. Oh, that's Forrest Gump. Let me move this down. Devil Wears Prada. Here we go. Okay. So this is how many of you have seen this movie? I see one so far. Let me go back
I
to
have
my.
seen it.
I have seen it.
Okay, great. So I'm
I've
seeing
seen,
like two,
half
three
of
people.
it.
Half of it? The first half by any chance?
Yeah. I
Perfect.
tried seeing the second half, but like my internet just disconnected.
Well, the second half is fairly predictable. You know, it's warm and fuzzy. She succeeds, but moves on from her life at the magazine. It's all a really great wrap up to the story. But we're talking about the first 10 minutes anyway. So this is a good thing. So let me now go back to my, there we go, flip sides with that. And let's take a look at the first few pages of the written document here and see what we've got. So fade in, music comes up, fade in, steam on a mirror, wiped off by Andy Sachs 20s, pretty but not glamorous, smart but green, hair up in a towel, brushing her teeth. We interrupt Andy getting ready and ellipse. Now, right off the bat, this is reminding me of somebody's project. There was somebody who was doing makeup in a mirror, and it was in the beat sheet project. And I commented about how the beats of getting made up in the mirror are all kind of the same beat. But you can see here that this is really well illustrated in a series of shots. So what we have here is a numbered script. Okay, so this is something like probably, okay, second blue in progress. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that maybe today if we have time. Blue script pages represent revisions, and they're revisions to a working document that has gone to production. Okay, so we're in production now. This is a production script, so we have scene numbers. Okay, and then we're going to granular detail by having Apple, Baker, Charlie, Delta, Epsilon. Okay, we have designations for shots and a series of shots here. This is what we would call in a script that we're still drafting in the draft process before it goes to production. We would call this by standard format a series of shots. Okay, so what we have is Andy in the mirror getting ready in the morning to go somewhere. Okay, a drawer filled with about 40 lipsticks slides into the frame. A lacy thong floats through the air, and one of the girls pulls it up over her glossy legs. One of the girls, interesting. A gorgeous pair of slingback heels. One of the girls pulls the shoes on while her model and handsome boyfriend reclines on the crisp white sheets behind her. Pair of comfortable wedges. Andy dresses while Nate, rumpled, unshowered, wearing an old Alice in Chains t-shirt, watches her reclining in mismatched bed in a bag sheets. A series of quick cuts. Andy eats a full breakfast, eggs, bacon, bagel. One of the girls, and girls is capitalized here, and it's not capitalized up here. Here it is here. Where did I see? No, I guess it was. Okay, my mistake. Okay, one of the girls carefully counts out 7 almonds and pours a huge cup of black coffee. Andy straightens a pile of newspaper clips from the Daily Northwestern with the byline, Andrea Sachs, and proudly tucks them into her hideous college graduation present briefcase. One of the girls takes Listerine breath strips, keys, and a Gucci money clip and shoves everything into a tiny Fendi clutch. And then we go to the next slug line, exterior New York City day. Now, this could be a little bit confusing, I suppose. We've got several girls. They're all getting ready for work. Andy is the only one listed by name, and she's in all caps. So it's the first time we see Andy. Okay, some of you didn't catch that detail in the script formatting exercise. First time we see any actor in the script, their name is in caps. And then we probably have their age after that, and it's usually in parentheses. In this case, the writer's using commas to separate the age, and that's fine too. Pretty but not glamorous, smart but green, hair up in a towel, brushing her teeth. A basic description of who or what this individual is and what they're doing, so we get a sense of this character right off the bat. Okay, but now we see other girls. Okay, we see 3 or 4 other girls getting ready also. Are they in the same place? Is it all steam on a mirror in the same location? It becomes clear in the visual presentation that they're different girls in different locations. They're all getting for work at the same time. Okay, so it's parallel storylines happening in the very first scene of this movie. So I suppose it could be a little bit confusing if you just had the written document to go by, but it will become obvious when I show you the video clip. Okay. Exterior, scene 2, exterior New York City day. Okay, the girls looking flawless fold their legs into taxis and town cars, and Andy trots down the street and into the subway. Okay, so now we know by seeing all these different women getting into these different cabs that they're all in different locations. But it's all New York City day. Okay, and it could have been exterior New York City streets day, because that technically would be the most accurate description for what we're looking at. Women getting in taxis. It doesn't happen in your living room. It doesn't happen in the foyer in your apartment building. It happens out on the street. So a more exact slug line might have read exterior New York City streets day. And then we have all the girls getting in taxis. Scene 3, interior office building lobby day. Andy strides into an office building, confident. A guard stops her, indicates she should sign a clipboard, and she signs in. Andy, what floor is Elias Clark, Human Resources? Beat. The guard just looks at her. What? Continued. Guard, honey, you want West 57th. Scene 4, exterior 57th Street day. Andy runs, but she's moving against the pedestrian tide. We widen out to see Andy bucking the flow like a salmon going upstream. She gets to an intersection, starts to cross the street, and just misses being decked by a bike messenger. Scene 5, exterior Elias Clark day. Andy sees a tower looming in front of her, Elias Clark. Streaming into the building are polished girls we saw in the opening, their heels clicking and clacking on the concrete. They are clackers of Elias Clark. Andy runs in. Scene 6, and it says omitted. See that here? In a working script, and this is what we call blue revisions. Okay, and you can see here we had the shooting draft in September of that year. We had blue revisions on the 15th of September, pink revisions on the 20th of September, greens on October, yellows on November, and goldenrod in December, and then we go to salmon. These are colors of script pages, okay? And in a working script, once production has started, you're working from the shooting draft, which is white, the master draft, okay? And then what's gonna be happening, and it happens for a variety of reasons. Production might fall behind on the very first day of shooting. When that happens, things have to get thrown out in order to stay on schedule. So they might omit something. In this case, they omitted scene 6, and scene 6 is on page 1. So already page 1 in our working script after day 1 goes to blue revisions. Okay, and what the writers will do is they'll go to every page that's affected by the omission of scene 6, and they'll create a blue page. And then what all the departments heads have to do is at the end of the night, when the ADs are handing out call sheets for the next day, they also hand out interdepartment envelopes to all the department heads, and inside are my blue revisions for my script. And what I've got to do is I got to take my script book out, and I've got to go through page by page and pull out the old white copy and slot in the new blue page that goes in that spot. And then my page starts looking, my script starts looking multicolored. Okay. In September, on September 9th, when production started, my draft was white. But 2 weeks later, my script was white and blue. And then a week and a half after that, my script was white, blue, and pink. Okay. And then on a regular basis, I was getting colors to the point where by December, okay, when you're getting, close to, the end of production at that point, if you were to take your script and just flip it like a flip book, it would have all those colors in it of all the things that were changed on the fly during production, and the new colored page is slotted in. And the reason we make them colors is so you know that it's different from what the original shooting script was. Okay, because here's the thing. In pre-production, a department head is going to take that shooting script, the white draft, and they're going to do a breakdown of the whole movie according to scenes and the production schedule and what scenes are being shot on what days. And they're going to go through each scene and make sure that they have everything they need for that scene to be shot on the day that it's scheduled. So as a lighting technician, for instance, or as a cameraman, I'm worried about special gear that has to be rented for a particular day of production. I want to remember the details of what that scene was on that production day. I want to know, will we be on nights by the time this day happens? Will we still be on days shooting when this particular production scheduled day shows up? What will we be doing? Will we be inside? Will we be outside? Okay, because I would have to know things like exterior night, for instance. I want to know when those shooting opportunities are taking place because I have to schedule extra manpower and extra equipment on the shooting days where we are shooting night exterior. Okay, and so I'm going to have all that kind of stuff worked out in my production breakdown and pre-pro. But now let's say I've got something figured out for scene 6, right? And I have stuff that I was supposed to get ordered, and it would have been ordered probably on the day before the first day of the shoot. Okay, so that on the day of the shoot or the day after the shoot, when I need it, that gear would be there, or those crew people would be there, or that special piece of equipment, whatever it was. Now scene 6 is omitted. So I have to know when I get a new colored script page, I have to immediately compare that to my production schedule. And if there's anything that I was going to rent, cancel it. And if there's something that I did rent that I was going to use maybe the following day or in the in the subsequent week, get it off rental because it's going to cost money. Okay. Colored script pages are super, super important. They're not only changes in the script, but it's going to inform the whole crew of what's going on in terms of what their particular departmental concerns are. Okay. And in this case, we omitted scene 6. And in best practices and standard script format, we don't just take 6 out of the script and then renumber all the scenes. No, no, no. All the scene numbers stay the same, but we put omitted by scene 6 so that everybody knows that whatever that was ain't happening no more. Okay. And we can all breathe a little bit easier. Maybe it was a really complicated location that's no longer practical or too expensive. They can't afford it. They're already over budget. So they just knock it out of the script. Okay. So scene 6, very interesting. Scene 7, interior Elias Clark elevator day. Andy is a shrub in a clacker forest. One turns to another, clacker number 1. I love that. You look awesome today. I can't wear cropped pants. I look like a whale. Clacker number 2. Oh, please, I look terrible. I almost called in fat today. Andy looks at them, then down at herself. If they're fat, what am I? Ding, elevator opens and Andy exits. You might put ding in caps as well. That's a notation to the sound effects people, the post-production sound supervisor, that we need an effect right here, an elevator ding. Okay. Unless it's practical, but it's usually not practical because the ding might happen at the wrong time or over somebody's piece of dialogue. And then it may or may not cut well, according to the editors, depending on which piece they use. In one close-up, we have a ding. In the other close-up, we don't, or in the wide, we don't, but in the close, we have a ding. Might not work. So if they're going to have a ding, an elevator ding, there'll be no ding in the scene when they shoot it. And then they'll decide in post-production where to put the ding and they'll lay it over in the soundtrack. Okay. So that's why we want to have something like ding in caps. Okay. Scene 8, interior, Elias Clark, human resources office day. Andy sits across from Sherry, 40s. On the wall are covers from Elias Clark magazines, a news magazine, a cooking magazine, a fitness magazine, and Runway magazine. Andy is unloading clips from her horrible briefcase. Andy, this article was about the Take Back the Night March. This was a 4-part series on the impact of busing on the public schools. Sherry holds up her finger to stop Andy from talking. Sherry, I have 2 positions available. One is assistant to the road test editor of Auto Universe magazine. Andy forces a smile. And the other one? Interior runway reception area day. Sleek, elegant, hard-edged chic. Behind the reception desk is an elegant logo that says runway. Andy walks over. Andy, hi, I have an appointment with Emily Carlton. Emily, Andrea Sachs, Emily and Miranda later. Okay, so in the working script, they changed the name of the antagonist, okay, from Emily Carlton to Miranda, or from Andrea Sachs to Miranda, I guess. Pronounced Andrea, Andrea. Andy refers to herself as Andrea. Andy turns and sees a taller, thinner, and amazingly more groomed clacker. This is Emily. She looks the part of the sleek fashionista, but is propelled by a core of barely tamped down anxiety. She examines Andy. Emily, human resources certainly has a bizarre sense of humor, sighed and annoyed. Follow me. Interior runway hallway day. Okay, here's an interesting point I want to look at. Sighed, comma, annoyed. All right. So this is a working script. It's been through how many sets of revisions now? It's been through all the colors of the rainbow from white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 revisions. Okay, this is the 7th or 8th version of the script, and it's the shooting script at this point. This draft, you might see things like parentheticals that say forces a smile and sighed and annoyed. Okay, because the writer has probably been working with the director and the actors at this point, and they've already had rehearsals between the director and the actors, and a lot of times the writers will be present for the rehearsals, because in the rehearsals the director and the actors are working out performance details and idiosyncrasies and behavior. They're having behavioral discussions and dialogue discussions. Well, I don't think my character would say this at this moment in the story. Kind of, not arguments, but constructive conversations that the director and the actors are working out ahead of time, so we don't waste production time and burn a lot of film shooting variations that nobody really wants, likes, or needs. Okay, so at this point, this script might very well have more parentheticals than you're used to seeing. But in original drafts, in first drafts of anything, pretty much, the parentheticals are it's generally accepted that they will not be included in your first draft, because it's too soon in the process for the writer to be telling the director or the actors how they should be responding to a line of dialogue. Okay, and it's usually the actor's purview if they want to sigh or not, if they want to roll their eyes or not, unless the director gives them a specific request. In this particular line, when Andrea says this, Emily, I want you to act extremely condescending, maybe roll your eyes and go, of course you are, right? That's a specific directive given to you by your director, and then the actor will probably take that advice. Okay, but in the script, when we're going through the read-throughs and we're doing our rehearsals, this is when they'll decide whether or not they want to put in parentheticals. And that might be a notation to remind the actor that in this case, they were going to sigh and act annoyed at this point. Okay. Scene 10, interior runway hallway day. Emily briskly walks Andy down the hall. Emily, okay, so I was Miranda's second assistant, but her first assistant recently got promoted, so now I'm the first. Andy glimpses an office in front of them, seductively bright. Andy, and you're replacing yourself? Emily, I'm trying. Miranda sacked the last 2 girls after only a few weeks. We need to find somebody who can survive here. Do you understand? Andy, yes, of course. Who's Miranda? Emily, eyes widening. You didn't just ask me that. She's the editor-in-chief of Runway, not to mention a legend. Work a year for her and you can get a job at any magazine you want. 1 million girls would kill for this job. Sounds great. I'd love to be considered. She smiles. Emily tries to think how to break it to her. Emily, Andrea, Runway is a fashion magazine and interest in fashion is crucial. Andy, what makes you think I'm not interested in fashion? Emily gives her a look. Andy smiles, like she has no idea what Emily could mean. Suddenly, Emily's BlackBerry goes off and she gasps. Emily, oh my God, no, 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 no. Andy, what's wrong? 11, exterior Elias Clark day. A black sedan pulls to a sudden stop outside the building. Scene 12, interior runway, bullpen day. Emily begins rapid fire dialing 4-digit extensions. Emily, all but screaming, she's on her way, tell everyone. Just then, a dapper man of about 40 walks briskly by. Nigel, I thought she was coming in at 9. Emily, her driver text messaged. Her facialist ruptured a disc. God, these people. Nigel turns and sees Andy, looks at Emily. Who's that? Emily continued. I can't even talk about it. No time to discuss. Nigel calls down the hallway. Nigel, all right, everyone, man your battle stations. Bewildered and takes a beat. Did somebody eat my onion bagel? Behind him, Andy tries not to look guilty. Okay, I'm just going to take it that far because I think the visuals do a whole lot to add to the energy of this scene, but you can kind of see what it is, right? It's real rapid fire dialogue. There's a lot of crispy sort of innuendo going on. It's smart. It's moving very briskly through the content. I mean, we're into page 12 already, and it's just when Miranda is walking into the building. Okay. We're going to meet Miranda in subsequent pages, but I'll let you see that through the eyes of the lessons from the screenplay. And then I'm going to show you the actual first 10 minutes. Okay. And here's something I just want to say right now as I think about it. The lecture from Tuesday's class, I am currently in a fair use debate with the PR department at Universal Studios. And I'm trying to convince them that the video that I showed you guys on Tuesday was purely for analysis and they should leave it up on YouTube so you can watch your lecture. The jury is still out. Okay. I've made an appeal. And so what I did was I embedded the lecture from Tuesday into web courses. So don't bother going to YouTube for that lecture. You can go straight to web courses if you want to take a look at what was discussed on Tuesday. Okay, let me show you now the video from Lessons from the Screenplay. And I told you I use this guy a lot because I think he's really intelligent and he writes some really good stuff. He's usually spot on in his analysis. And I really like the points that he makes about these films that he analyzes. So let's take a look. I'm going to go straight to the YouTube link here, hopefully. And we'll take a look at this scene. Hey, wow. What's up? So my link, my link is not working. So I'm going to do this the old fashioned way. Dun, dun, dun.
While you're looking up the video, I have a question about the script the part of the script we just read.
Yes.
So you mentioned that like the parenthetical asides that was in the dialogue would be something that would be like added as they're rehearsing. Would you say the same for like when they were saying what the characters were thinking or showing the specific shots, or would that be an example of when you said like we wouldn't really be able to do that unless we're like well established in the industry? Like I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, what they, especially with young writers, new writers, the establishment isn't really interested in what a young writer thinks and a character is going to be thinking or feeling. That's part of a process that they leave up to the directors and the actors to sort out in pre-production during rehearsals. So that's why they say, you know, don't give us parentheticals and tell us how the actors should deliver a line of dialogue, or don't tell us what they're feeling or thinking in a parenthetical. We'll sort that out on our own. What we want you to do is supply us with the action, tell us who's involved, give us their specific lines of dialogue, which we may change, by the way. You give us the situation and give us the conversation, and we'll handle the nuance, right? And the visuals. And so that's kind of the deal you make with Hollywood when you become a screenwriter, which is vastly different than what you're doing as a novelist. When you're writing a novel, like the original writer of the novel, The Devil Wears Prada, gave us all this nuance, right? How, you know, what's Miranda thinking? Miranda is this, you know, this aloof snob of a super powerful, super successful editor of a fashion magazine. And so she exudes this kind of control, this kind of dominion over the office, to the point where everybody is so afraid to piss her off or do the wrong thing and get fired that she's created an environment of anxiety and servitude and frantic behavior that either drives people away and they quit, or invariably nobody can do anything right and they eventually get fired, with the exception of the lucky few who somehow rise to the occasion of impressing Miranda, and they're allowed to live and they're allowed to stay working at Runway. Okay. And so you're going to kind of get a sense of that from the novel, and then you're going to get a sense of that from the director and the cinematographer in the visuals. And so the screenwriter's kind of walking that tightrope in the middle between giving us the dialogue and the events from the novel, leaving the novel nuances there as a Bible for the director to then use with the actors to sort out, when do you want to gasp and drop your drink, or when do you want to roll your eyes and sound condescending and so forth. They don't really want you to give them the parenthetical analysis in your script. They want the action and the dialogue, right? And there's a lot of, there is a lot of room for you to, assert your creative license within that narrow structure of dialogue and action. Okay. And one of the things, and I've made some notations now on some of your dialogue samples already. One of the things is, folks, your writing has to be impeccable. You can't hand me a document with spelling errors, grammatical errors. Okay. If you do that, here's the thing. Some of you are going to get a sense that in your analysis, I said something about the first maybe half a page and that was it. And I gave you a grade. You know why? I stopped reading. Okay. That's what's going to happen in the real world. Okay. If you give somebody a script and the phonics and the grammar and the punctuation and the spelling and the action lines and the slug lines is incorrect or erroneous in some way, they're going to stop reading, folks. They're not going to read any further than that, because unless you're Aaron Sorkin, okay, they're not going to read a script full of academic mechanical errors. Okay. If you're a professional, supposedly you're beyond all of that. Okay. So that's one of the things that you can definitely exert your authority over in your narrow lane of concern, right? Make sure your stuff reads like a gem. Okay. Now, having said that, sometimes you're going to create a character. Okay. I've been watching clips from True Romance the last couple of days. Anybody seen that movie, True Romance? It was one of Quentin Tarantino's first screenwriting jobs. And in that story, Gary Oldman plays a pimp, and he's a pimp with a strange sort of dialect. It's a mixture of street and ebonics and just uneducated, ignorant drug dealer, right? And that whole thing. So his lines of dialogue are going to be phonetically incorrect, right? And you might you might write things out like ain't, or you might use words like comin, COMIN apostrophe instead of coming, right? Or going, GOIN apostrophe, or gimme, GIMME, right? Because that is specific dialogue that this character is going to feed you back in their performance, right? And it's part of how you get the sense that this guy is a rough around the edges drug dealing pimp, right? A drug dealing pimp presumably is not going to speak in the perfect Queen's English, right? And say things like Gary Oldman might say in an interview on television, right? He's not going to speak clearly and succinctly. He's playing a violent character that was raised in the streets. And so that's different than simply creating grammatical and mechanical errors, because those are obvious in your text, okay? And as a professional writer, you got to get that right. You got to nail that. Yes.
If our grammar is going to be wrong, it has to be intentional.
Correct. And it should be obvious. The incorrect grammar, in other words, will conspicuously only appear in the dialogue lines. That's how we know that you're not simply making a routine error. But I'm seeing grammatical errors in the action lines and in the slug lines. Okay. And that shouldn't be happening. Okay. Those are the little tip-offs. Those are the red flags that the studio readers are going to see and go, this person's is not a professional writer. And your work is going to go right in the circular file. Okay. And that's not me talking. That's not my opinion. This is something that I've been told many times. I've got friends who work in the industry and they say, man, you wouldn't believe how many times I've, you throw things away because If you can't spell T-O-O or T-W-O and know the difference between those three words, then you're not a professional writer. Okay. That's a very basic problem that you should have had ironed out in middle school. Okay. So just be aware of that. I'm not grading you heavily or taking points off heavily for stuff like that, unless I see more than, a couple of times. But if I get through the first page of your homework assignment and you got 6 of those, bang, you're going to start losing points. Okay. Because in the real world, they just toss your work right out and you'd be done. Okay. So remember that. Okay. And if this is not to be hard. Okay. I'm just being honest with you guys. Okay. You got to fix it if that's one of your problems. Okay. I'm off my soapbox. Now let's listen to what Mike has to say about this.
I'm Michael. This is Lessons from the Screenplay. One of the most difficult parts of a script is the beginning. If you can't find a way to set up your story in a way that is both efficient and engaging, an audience may quickly lose interest. And as author Sid Field writes in his book Screenplay, everything is related in a screenplay, so it becomes essential to introduce your story components from the beginning. You've got 10 pages to grab or hook your reader, so you've got to set up your story immediately. The Devil Wears Prada does a fantastic job of setting up its story immediately. So today I want to go on a tour of the first 10 pages of the screenplay to explore the various techniques used to establish character and convey exposition, and examine how each page draws us deeper and deeper into the world of the story.
That's all.
Let's take a look at The Devil Wears Prada. The screenplay for The Devil Wears Prada wastes no time in introducing us to the main character. The screenplay begins, fade in, steam on a mirror, wiped off by Andy Sachs, 20s, pretty but not glamorous, smart but green, hair up in a towel, brushing her teeth. But rather than simply following Andy's morning routine, the script does something more interesting. We intercut Andy getting ready and we see 3 or 4 other girls getting ready too. A drawer filled with about 40 lipsticks slides into frame. One of the girls carefully applies shiny lip gloss with a brush. Andy puts on cherry chapstick. The first page uses comparison to concisely establish who our protagonist is by showing us who she isn't. While all these other women are meticulously choosing their wardrobe, Andy is simply grabbing what is comfortable and practical because her focus is elsewhere. Andy straightens a pile of newspaper clips from the Daily Northwestern with the byline Andrea Sachs and proudly tucks them into her hideous college graduation present briefcase. In just 3/4 of a page, screenwriter Aline Broach McKenna establishes everything we need to know about our protagonist right now. She isn't interested in fashion, and she studied to be a journalist. As we get to the bottom of the first page, there's a moment where Andy arrives at an office building, but it's made a mistake.
What floor is Elias Clark Human Resources?
Honey, you want West 49th.
This demonstrates how inexperienced Andy is. It's an illustration of her character description in the script. Smart, but green. But there will be plenty more examples of this in the coming pages, and this scene interrupts the momentum of the sequence, which is probably why it's missing in the final film. In fact, almost the entirety of the second page was cut. Instead, the film jumps right to the moment when Andy enters the runway reception area, where we're given the dramatic question, exposition, and stakes. Page 3 is where Andy meets the first important supporting character.
Andrea Sachs?
Yes?
Great. Human Resources certainly has an odd sense of humor.
This is Emily. She looks the part of the sleek fashionista, but is propelled by a core of barely tamped down anxiety. Throughout the film, Emily will be a foil to Andy, someone who cares a lot about fashion but lacks Andy's confidence. In these first few pages, however, she serves as our tour guide to the world of Runway magazine, and thus the world of the story. Emily begins her tour by explaining why they're looking for a new assistant.
You're replacing yourself.
Well, I am trying. Miranda sacked the last 2 girls after only a few weeks. We need to find someone who can survive here. Do you understand?
Here, Emily voices the dramatic question of the sequence. Will Andy get the job as the assistant to Miranda? Which then begs the question,
Who's Miranda?
Oh my God, I will pretend you did not just ask me that. She's the editor-in-chief of Runway, not to mention a legend. You work a year for her and you can get a job at any magazine you want. A million girls would kill for this job.
With these lines, Emily shares exposition about Miranda while also establishing stakes. This job is valuable. Emily's tour ends at the bottom of page 4. In 4 pages, we've learned about the characters, the dramatic situation, and the world of the story. So that on page 5, we're finally ready to establish the power of the antagonist. There are many ways to establish the raw power of the antagonist. In The Devil Wears Prada, Miranda is imbued with power through the reactions of other characters.
Oh my God. No, no, no!
When Miranda arrives to work early, chaos erupts inside. Assistants frantically push clothing rails out of the way. Editors race into their office. Andy peers in. One of the editors changes from kitten heels to sky-high stilettos. Interior Elias Clark lobby. Day. We watch Miranda walking through the lobby. We see people react to her. Guards, assistants, and secretaries cower. Distinguished executives bow their heads in respectful greeting. Amidst the panic, we meet another important supporting character who will become Andy's mentor, Nigel.
She's not supposed to be here until 9.
Here, comparison is used once again to show character. Everyone else is freaking out at Miranda's arrival, while Nigel remains calm and in control.
All right, everyone, gird your loins.
All this buildup climaxes as the antagonist finally enters the office, and we meet Miranda. Through the panic that we just witnessed, we understand that people are afraid of Miranda, but we don't yet know why. That all changes as soon as Miranda speaks.
I don't understand why it's so difficult to confirm an appointment.
No, I'm so sorry, Miranda. I actually did confirm
Tales
last
of
night.
your incompetence do not interest me. Tell Simone I'm not going
Miranda begins a monologue full of overwhelming requests that lasts for a page and a half. From her arrival on page 5 through her monologue ending on page 8, the script makes it very clear that Miranda is the fashion expert and is impossible to impress. This setup is important because we already know that Andy, who doesn't care about fashion, is going to have to impress her to get the job. So by the top of page 9, the impending conflict is clear, and we finally arrive at the showdown.
She wants to see you.
Move! Given everything we know about the characters, the interview begins about as well as we'd expect.
So you don't read Runway?
No?
You have no style or sense of fashion?
I think that depends on what you're...
No. That wasn't a question.
Andy, expecting to be judged on her journalistic merits, is instead dismissed due to her ignorance of fashion.
I also won a national competition for college journalists with my series on the janitors union, which exposed the exploitation of...
But it's this same ignorance of fashion, established on the very first page, that makes Andy unafraid to talk back to Miranda.
Yeah, okay. You're right. I don't fit in here. I don't know that much about fashion, but I'm smart. I learn fast, and I will work very hard.
I've got the exclusive on the Cavalli for Gwyneth.
This scene is essentially a miniature version of the entire film. Andy attempting to please Miranda, Miranda being abusive, and Andy ultimately sticking up for herself, which, as we're about to see, leads to success. Is at the top of page 11, almost exactly at the 10-minute mark, the dramatic question is answered.
Andrea!
On page 1, we met our protagonist, and through comparison learned that this is a story about people who care about fashion and people who don't. By the end of page 4, we knew the dramatic question, had received all the necessary exposition, and understood the stakes. And by page 9, we had met important supporting characters, and through their reactions, learned the power of the antagonist, providing the proper build-up to the first of many battles our hero will face. In just 10 pages, screenwriter Aline Broach McKenna has set the stage for the entire story of The Devil Wears Prada. With the holidays approaching, I'll be making my annual round trip from...
That's just a little bit of shameless self-promotion, so I'm going to stop the video there. And I'm going to get back to my presentation. So, can you guys see, first of all, did anybody pick up on the differences between the final screenplay or the final presentation and the screenplay? Did you see any changes even from what we looked at on the written document?
Some of the dialogue was changed,
Mhm.
like especially the by Nigel.
Yeah, that was probably something that was spontaneous on the day, right? Because what's happening in this first 10 pages? What are we doing here?
Introducing everyone.
Yeah, and
Establishing their relationships to each other.
World building.
This is it, baby. This is it. It's the whole enchilada. We're finding out. We know we know who Andy is. We know what she's like. We know what she wants. We know where she lives. We understand the environment she's about to get immersed in. We meet the antagonists, okay? And there's a couple, right? It's Emily and it's Miranda. We know what their mindset is like through their dialogue. We're gonna meet Nigel, and we find out Nigel's, he's a fashionista, right? He's gonna have that flair, right? And I think it's stereotypical, but what was Nigel's original line? Let me see if I can find it again in the in my PDF here. Where's my oh, I'm lost. Where's my PDF? Week 6, Devil Wears Prada. Whoops. Want that, open it. All right, he says, gird your loins in the, all right, everyone, man your battle stations. Beat and bewildered. Did somebody eat my onion bagel, right? So that's okay. But what's the stereotype? And I don't want to misrepresent myself, but what's the stereotype of a male in the fashion industry?
He's probably gay.
Okay, and so he's going to have that sparkle, right? So would somebody, if you're trying to make that impression, what line was better? What line worked better? Man your battle stations and who ate my onion bagel, or everybody gird your loins, here she comes, I think it works really, really well. Okay. And I'm hopefully it's not offensive to anybody, because I can honestly believe, and I couldn't think that it was meant in any other way than to be funny. So I think it's, it's one of those, I think it kind of works. And I think it demonstrates to you that even your dialogue at some point, it's going to change. It's, it's a lot of this is going to change when we get to the physical production aspects of your document. Okay. So give us the best dialogue you can, and give us the best environment you can, and really help us understand your characters. And then it might not matter so much if we tweak a line here and there. Go ahead, Jamika.
I also feel like with the character of Nigel, by them choosing Stanley Tucci, and they're not gonna pronounce his last name, I feel like those lines really fit like what you imagine him as a character. So I feel like maybe once they casted him, he kind of like not improv a little bit, but like made it more to fit what you think his character would be.
Yeah, which is, I mean, he's fabulous. He's in the fashion industry, and I think he did a fantastic job with this. I love Stanley Tucci. I think he's a phenomenal actor. So, whatever he did, I would probably be in favor of it anyway. But yeah, but my point really is understand that, even your dialogue can change on the day, because the director and the actors are they're going to see something or feel something that they didn't feel in rehearsals, and they're going to want to express that, right? So that's why, you don't need to give me, where's Miranda's line? Let me see if I can find it here really quick. When Emily is sort of pitching herself that she was an award-winning journalist student, and even when Miranda makes Miranda qualifies Andy pretty much very quickly when she says, so you don't have any fashion sense. And Andy starts to respond, well, I really think that it's a matter of, and she says, no, that wasn't a question, you know. That was a very condescending line, right? You can't read that any other way. If you were talking and you were about to defend yourself over an evaluation that was made or a judgment that was cast in your direction, and I cut you off in mid-defense and I said, no, I'm right, and you don't know what you're talking about, that would be really rude and condescending. Hopefully I don't do that, by the way. But that would be rude and condescending. And you wouldn't have to put that in parentheticals, I don't think. That's kind of obvious, especially when we've got the double M dashes right after, which is in standard script format. The double M dash is a written clue that one character's line cuts the next line off from the subsequent line of dialogue. Okay. It's not like an ellipse where the ellipse, the ... signifies when somebody's talking and they, I don't know, trail off from what they were thinking or saying, ... That's one kind of delivery. The other kind of delivery is the double M dash, where someone's saying, no, I really think it's a matter of opinion, where no, that wasn't a question. You don't have fashion sense. That double M dash is, you just got cut off, right? So some of you are using it, and I'm seeing it in your work, and I'm hoping that you understand that that's what the difference is. It is clearly explained in the Screenwriter's Bible, by the way, which I hope you guys are using to your great advantage, because I did when I was a grad student. I used that thing constantly to make sure that, I was using proper formatting. So that was my next point. In the very first scene, she's not wearing a towel on her head. I suspect that, that might have been, a protest on the part of our lead actress. One will never know unless you were there to see it. The rest of it, I think, kind of worked the way it worked on the printed page. It was a series of shots, and we were kind of seeing that pretty effectively. What I thought was neat was they also did it in the form of inserts. Meaning, we saw somebody putting on a pair of socks, but we didn't necessarily see who that was. We saw somebody putting on some sky-high stilettos, but we're not quite sure who that was, just a series of shots or inserts. And I noticed a couple of you were using language like that in your beat sheets. And I tried to respond to you to let you know that we refer to that when you're talking about a shot that is very specific and it shows us someone putting on their shoes up close, or reading their watch to see what time it is, or looking at a text that appears on their cell phone. We call that an insert. And in script format, we use caps, insert, and then a colon, and then we say what the shot is. We give a description of that shot, and it falls in line with the rest of the action lines to the left justification. Okay, so that's specific camera direction, and that's a legal move on your part to give camera direction in that sense, because if you feel that it's a really important shot that should play as an insert, you can go ahead and write it in. Doesn't mean the director will take your advice, but at least the director will understand your context for making it an insert and not another slug line for some reason, right? Okay. So did you get a sense of the world by watching the video? There's a lot of room for interpretation, I think, in the written word on the page, as far as, where we're told we are, runway, reception area, day, right? Well, unless you've worked in the fashion industry and have a strong sense of what the lobby of a fashion magazine is going to look like, you could try putting details like that on the page. But then you have to ask yourself, is that really advancing my story, or am I getting bogged down in details that might be solved by a production designer, right? So you can put a little of that in, behind the reception desk is an elegant logo that says runway, right? That's cool. You can put that in. It gives us kind of a sense of where we are and what the character is seeing. But also remember that your feature scripts need to be about, anywhere from 80 to 215 pages, right? And sometimes extended action lines can take up a lot of real estate in your script. I noticed that some of you are using full sentences and proper dialogue and description of locations and situations that are unfolding for the characters. But see if there's a way that you can abbreviate that language and still be grammatically correct, functionally correct as far as punctuation and spelling, but still give us a sense of what that situation is without getting too wordy. Okay, because your word count can contribute to your action lines, or it can contribute to your dialogue. And the only thing that really ends up on the screen is the dialogue, not your action lines. So see if there's a way that you can sort of, I call it taking the air out of something, where you can say, let me see if I can find something in here that we can maybe condense. These are all pretty tight action lines as such. Andy sits across from Sherry. On the wall are covers from Elias Clark magazines, a news magazine, a cooking magazine. That's pretty tight, right? We don't have to say Andy sits across from the manager of the human resources department, Sherry, a woman in her 40s. On the wall behind her are all the covers of the magazines that Elias Clark represents. They have a variety of topics, including news, cooking, fitness and health magazines, and then of course the infamous Runway magazine. That would be a really wordy action line in the case of this particular section right here. Instead, it's very, chop out all the words that aren't functionally critical to the message, and then move into your dialogue. Okay, because your dialogue is what is really telling us what your characters are about. Does that make sense? Am I making sense to you guys now, or am I blathering on? Okay. All right. Anybody have any thoughts about The Devil Wears Prada? Anything that you want to point out or discuss at all at this point?
I kind of get why the beginning starts with everyone getting dressed, but isn't it kind of like redundant, since you can just see how they look afterwards, like the difference between Andy and the other girls. Like there's really no reason to show like her, how she gets ready and all that.
Well, the point was trying to establish that that Andy is a pragmatic personality. She was a journalism student in college, and her focus is on journalistic writing and journalistic pursuit. The other girls who are getting ready are quaffing, right? They're not just going to work, but they're going to work. Wow. Right? Because they work at a fashion magazine, and they are steeped in the culture. And so what the writer is trying to do, and this could be transcendent from the novel itself, okay? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to differentiate between the two types of characters. The folks that work at Runway, who are totally sold on fashion as a culture and as a lifestyle, and then Andy, who is only kind of there to apply for a job almost as a passing fancy. She's just looking for a writing job of some kind, and she doesn't realize she's going to end up a secretary for a fashion icon at a fashion magazine that she has absolutely no knowledge or interest of. Okay, they're trying to create that difference for you. Then when we see those people at their place of work, we're seeing them as part of the environment itself, right? Which I think is a different message than showing them getting ready for work, because one thing shows how invested those people are in their job, and the other one merely shows them as elements in the workplace that are passing in front of our eyes while we are focused on the two characters walking and talking at the lens, right? I think there's a difference in practicality between those two types of shots. Do you buy that at all?
I mean, kind of, yeah. I mean, that makes more sense. I don't know. I just always like heard you should never kind of really show someone getting ready and just establish anything after, like in a different way.
Yes, and probably 9 times out of 10 you would be right. We have a saying in the business. It says, don't show the car pulling out of the driveway. Just show the car rolling down the road. We know, the minute the actor gets in the car and turns the key, we know what happens next. They throw it into reverse, they look over their shoulder, they back out of the driveway, they wait at the apron, they look both ways, they back into the street, they throw it into drive, and they proceed moving forward. We don't need to see any of that. It's like saying, just tell me what time it is. Don't tell me how the watch works, right? Because we've got 2 hours to explain the story, meet the characters, figure out who they are in their headspace, figure out what they want, have conflict, resolve the conflict, live happily ever after, and get you out of the theater in 2 hours feeling good about the movie and about yourself. Right. And in those cases, we got to chop out everything that doesn't contribute to that objective. Okay. We got to take the air out of it, get all that superfluous information out. Okay. So first we're giving you a nice, well-rounded thing, and then we're dicing it up to give you only what you need to get through this experience quickly and efficiently and be entertained. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. It seems kind of, it seems pretty stoic or utilitarian, I think, in a lot of ways, because I feel like at that point that a lot of value is being stripped out of the story, which is why I gravitate to the idea of writing novels first, because that's where I get all my descriptive, passionate creativity out. In the novel, that's where I'm free to tell you the character, danced across the deck of her 45-foot ketch as she was plying gently through the Bahamian waters as the sun dappled off the surface like 1,000 diamonds, right? I can give you all of that in my novel, Seahawk, but in the script, I'm just going to say Laura definitely makes her way across the deck so she can drop anchor in the shallow waters off Abaco, right? Bang, that's the script. That's 2 different ways of describing that scene. One of them is going to transport you for as long as you want over a steaming cup of coffee, curled up on the sofa on a rainy morning where you would rather be inside than go out anyway. And you're just happy to be with a good book and a warm steaming cup of coffee. The other has to get you out of the theater in 2 hours. Right. And so that's where the visuals start to come into play. And that's where we have to start having faith in our cinematographer and in our director, that they're going to give us the visual component to our story that's very clear in our text, and they're going to help us communicate the rest of what we can't say, we can't afford to say in the script, and they're going to communicate it non-verbally through imagery, right? I use something like this as a really great example of cinematography and visual interpretation in my cinematography classes. The cinematography for this film was Florian Ballhaus. He's the son of Michael Ballhaus, who shot most, if not all, of Martin Scorsese's early movies. Okay, so this is like a 2nd generation DP who's shooting this movie. So he's bringing all of that knowledge and wisdom and culture to bear on the visuals. And then you have this dynamic screenwriter who's done this terrific job of distilling down an incredible novel. And then you have a really good director who's teaming up with really good actresses and giving you that's where you're getting the whole big picture, right? So you're part of this team, and your role is very important, but also compartmentalized, right? So you're writing the screenplay. You're giving us the motive, the environment, and the characters, and do it as succinctly as you can, so there's no ambiguity. If a character cuts another character off with language or with elocution, let us know. The elocution in the form of punctuation, 2 M dashes, right? If somebody's being sarcastic and they say, you don't have a fashion sense at all, do you? Well, I don't know. I think it's really subject. No, I wasn't asking you a question. That's pretty clear that they're saying, that how they're acting or behaving, right? So your dialogue is really super important. It's not just words on a page. Okay, really treat your dialogue like messaging. Okay, really super important. You have an important role to play in that sense. Without your very accurate dialogue, okay, and your succinct and tight action lines and your accurate slug lines, a guy like me might miss those clues when we're on set and we're photographing your story, right? You're kind of leaving us the breadcrumbs in the structure of your script that are going to help us complete the visuals and then complete the message. That makes sense to everybody? Anybody have any thoughts on that diatribe? I got to go to stadium view now so I can see everybody. What do you think, folks? This is kind of the spirit with which I'm writing the responses to you on your homework assignments, like your beat sheets and your dialogue exercise that you guys turned in to me this weekend. Okay, I've gotten through about 2/3 of those, and I've left some notes. I got a little time to just. What I'll do is I'll stop the screen share, and I will open up the some of my responses, and I'll just tell you the kinds of things I've been saying without revealing who the folks are who I was discussing these things with. Let's see here.
I had a small question regarding formatting for one of the comments that you put for mine. I had a character speaking telepathically, and I put it next to their name as opposed to under their name.
Right.
I was under the impression that you put it next to their name because it's affecting the way in which we hear it. Like you would hear it for off-screen or voiceover or mouth or something like that. That's why I put it next to it.
Yeah, and that's why I said check me on that, which was a clue for you to look at the Screenwriter's Bible. I think it functions just like a parenthetical, which would be under the character line, under the name of the character. The first line under the character's name is usually reserved for your parentheticals, and then parentheticals technically can happen within a body of dialogue, a chunk of dialogue, but usually they're right after the name and before the actual dialogue itself.
Yeah, I tried to look it up, but there wasn't really an answer for that specific case. So I just did it next to it because that's usually how you write stuff, like the way that affects how we hear it or how we perceive it.
Usually according to whose standard?
Just that's how I've seen OS and VO and stuff like that written.
Okay, because OS and VO are different.
Yeah, I know, but they're both similar in that it shows how we hear the dialogue in relation to what we see.
Right. Well, that could be, and in this case, I can only think of one time, and quite honestly, I can't remember where I saw it, where I saw something that was like what you were talking about, telepathic screen direction, or and it was as a parenthetical beneath the character's name. Now you're saying you think it could be VO and OS, and you may be very right about that. And it's one of those obscure points that I think if you do it your way, I'm just calling attention to it so you can keep an eye out for this if you ever get a definitive answer in the future. In a case like that, where most people aren't even familiar with what you're doing, let alone have an example of it, it's one of those times when they might simply accept it in your document without arguing with you about it. But in most other cases, I think it probably functions better as a parenthetical. For instance, if a character, I know according to the Screenwriter's Bible, if a character is speaking French, for instance, that's indicated in a parenthetical. It's not indicated like you would VO or OS, right? Yeah. It's still how you're hearing the line delivered, but it's done as a parenthetical. So that's where I was coming from when I addressed your telepathy.
I was just trying to get clarification on that.
Yeah, and it's I think what I'm getting at here is that it hasn't been locked in as a standard yet. We've clearly seen it both ways between the two of us.
Okay.
So I just wanted to point it out to you that it was a unique situation.
Mhm.
There's been some other comments though. Let's see. Oh, lots of you are giving me this terrific cover sheet, but you're not filling it in with your name and information. It just says script title written by the first name of the writer and then based on if any. Okay. So if you're not going to fill in the template, you might as well not give me the cover sheet. Go ahead and fill it in. You have to bring it up in final draft. You have to go into the pull down menus and click on title page, and then it will allow you to edit it. And then you click out a title page and it takes you to page 1. But I would fill it out. Put your title in there, put your name in there under written by, and then based on only if your idea is based on a novel or something that you have acquired screen rights to. And then you don't have to give your real address and phone number. I would put the school's address and phone number in there if you wanted to fill in or just erase that from the template. But don't put your real address and phone number on there unless you're not worried about who sees this document. But I would definitely fill out your title page. Let's see. Oh, about profanity. I don't care what you say. Okay. Some teachers will be like, oh, you can't, you're not being a good student. You're not representing the university if your homework assignments are full of profanity and pornography and any, violence. And I don't have a problem with any of those things if they are all done in the spirit of creating, viable art. Okay. The thing about profanity is it can lose its effect with an audience if you do it too much. Okay. So unless it's the Scorsese film there, the Departed, right? You probably want to be careful about the frequency with which you use profanity, only in that it loses its power, right? So if a character is always, the thing about The Departed is all those characters were from Boston, right? Southeast, and everything is fuck, right? Because that's kind of the stereotype of people from that part of Boston is that they talk like that.
But I mean, everybody says fuck a lot. Like our age, especially. Yeah. Like
I know I drop as many F-bombs as anybody. Okay. But the thing of it is, though, is if your character is constantly dropping F-bombs, right, then there's going to be one time when you really want that moment to resonate with the audience, and he's going to go, fuck, and they're not going to hear it because they've become desensitized to it. So that was my only criticism about vulgarity in your script is be careful that you don't rob yourself of important power later by overusing the profanity when you don't really have to. Okay. And that's all I'm saying about that. I have no moral position on it. I don't care if you drop F-bombs in your personal life or whatever. I do too. It's a failing of my own personal, behavior, but I don't have any, moral, standing on whether or not you curse as a, a character trait. Doesn't bother me. I'm more concerned that it becomes less effective for you if you overuse it in the context of the script. Okay, all I'm saying. Oh yeah, somebody was using too many parentheticals. A couple of you were using a lot of parentheticals. You don't have to tell me that a character yells if the character's dialogue is then all caps. It's just like a text message on the internet, right? All caps is the universal sign that you're yelling. So don't need it. It's superfluous, and it just kind of looks like a rookie mistake. So keep that in mind. What else did I comment on here? There was some redundancy. Somebody said exterior outside the house day, and it's like, okay, if you tell me it's exterior, you don't have to tell me outside. You can just say exterior and I'll understand that it's outside. That's one of those things. It's like, whoops, Could have been an honest mistake. I don't know, but this is the kind of thing that you should definitely be proofreading your document before you submit it. Think of me as a studio exec that's thinking about buying your script. Don't think of me as your nerdy professor who is just trying to teach you good formatting, right? Think of me as a studio exec. Would you want a studio exec to point out a rudimentary error like that to you? Or would you want a studio exec to disqualify your submission for a possible buy simply because they thought that, you know, you were a rookie making too many rookie mistakes? We have to hide as much of that as possible because good writing is where you find it. And if you're 20 and you're a super good writer, that should never count against you. Okay. But they're going to make assumptions if they see too many of these sort of newbie errors happening in your document. Let's see. First time we see a character in a script, what are we going to do? How are we going to present them in the action lines?
Capitalize.
Always capitalize their full name. Or
All
just capitalize
caps.
their name.
Doesn't necessarily have to be their full name, but maybe it helps if they have a full name in the context of the story. But certainly put their name in all caps, maybe their age in parentheses, and a little bit about who they are before you get started, just to give us something to go by. Initially, I never did that. I mean, I never gave the ages and a little bit about who the characters were because I thought that would all play out in the course of the story. But somebody pointed something out to me, which I should have thought of immediately, being a 30-year veteran of film production, which is those little clues that you put in the script aren't for the director or the actors. They're for the wardrobe supervisor. They're for the hair and makeup people. They're for the cameraman. They're for the lighting people, right? These are clues to the rest of the crew that's trying to work on the visuals, what they're dealing with. Okay. The casting department, if they know that Andy is a 20-something, they're not going to cast a 30-year-old woman to be, to play in the role of Andy in The Devil Wears Prada. They want an inexperienced young person fresh out of college. And that's typically not a 30-something-year-old woman, right? So that helps the casting department. It's all about other people, other sets of eyes reading your document and trying to collaborate with you. Let's see. Somebody was sort of giving us information in the action lines or in the parentheticals. When you have two characters talking to each other, you don't have to tell me that A is talking to B. If they're the only two characters on the page and they both have dialogue, it's fairly obvious that A is talking to B. Unless you tell us that one of them is on a cell phone and the other one is standing by listening. It's fairly obvious what's happening. So you don't have to give me that sort of superfluous description. Okay, I can come to that conclusion fairly quickly. Let's see. A lot of you got the continued thing working well. I'm wondering how many of you are actually working in Final Draft and how many of you are working in a different software program?
I'm working in Arc Studio Pro, which has worked for me and is virtually indistinguishable. But it's free.
Does it have all the same auto formatting that Final Draft has?
Nearly everything. Like it has the same like formatting, but it doesn't like automatically do continue. That's something I have to like manually put in, but it has that as an option. It doesn't automatically do it.
Okay.
But other than that, I've not noticed any significant differences.
Okay. So there's two places continued is going to appear. It's going to appear right after an actor's name or a character's name if their dialogue has straddled an action line. And continued will happen at the bottom of the page if action is continued from one page to the next. Okay. So that's the only two places that and it's always in caps and it's abbreviated CONT''D. Okay. Period. That's it. Okay. So if there's any other version of that in your documents, you might want to fix it. That's one of the things Final Draft does automatically, which I love because I used to forget all the time to put continued after in the dialogue, and it does it for me automatically. So I love it. That's why I recommend Final Draft, because it has all that auto formatting. and it alleviates you of a lot of the responsibility for having to remember that stuff, especially if you don't have a screenwriter's Bible handy. It's good in that respect. If you're using something that you're comfortable with, though, and you've been using it for a long time, I'm not going to tell you to stop doing that, right? But if you're starting from scratch and you don't really care what's what, I'd go right to Final Draft. That's what all the pros are using. And like I said, it has also some communicative features that writers can use between writers, like feedback and notes and collaborative functionality. So in that respect, I don't know if your other formats are offering those features. If they don't, you might consider switching to Final Draft at that point. I'm just keen on using whatever the rest of the professional community is using for the sake of standardization, right? That's been drilled into me from the union, when I was knee high to a grasshopper. Do what everybody else is doing so you blend in and you fit in and you integrate, right? But if you're happy with the software you're using, I'm not going to tell you to stop. Okay, so my notes have disappeared. Let me pull those back up. What else have I got here? Yeah, don't direct through parentheticals unless it's absolutely necessary, or if it's, pertinent to the situation that you're laying out for us. What else? Oh, somebody was indicating in the action lines that there was a flashback happening. That's camera direction. That appears as the word flashback. Look in the Screenwriter's Bible. You can go right to the index in the back and look up flashbacks, and then it'll direct you to some pages with examples of how the word flashback is used in the proper formation of a script. And check that out, because that's important. There's a lot of flashbacks especially in television. It seems like there's a lot of flashbacks. So you want to be using the standard formatting for that. Otherwise your work's going to stand out.
Professor Welch?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I submitted my assignment on the dialogue script, but
yes.
I read it again after submitting it, and I found like things that I didn't like and that I would like to change. So I was wondering if I could do those changes and resubmit it.
You can. I probably didn't mark you off or didn't mark you off very extensively on certain things, because I'm not trying to ding you for the sake of dinging you. I'm just trying to point stuff out. So you might have gotten feedback about something, but I didn't necessarily, take points off your grade.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I see that I submitted it, but I haven't received any feedback yet.
Oh,
so
we'll go ahead and swap it then. If I haven't gotten to it yet.
That
if you can, if you're locked out, because sometimes I put the closing date on the thing and then you can't submit after that. If you're locked out, just send it to me in email and let me know that that's the version you want me to really read. I have something that you turned in on time, so I'm not going to, take off for it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then tell me that it's a revision. Okay. And the fact that you're revising is good, good, good. You should always revise. Okay. That's part of the writing process. Nobody, and I mean nobody, writes it and knocks it out of the park on the first draft. Nobody, no way, no how.
Yeah.
Okay? So revision should be part of your mantra.
Okay. I'm gonna just go ahead and make the corrections that I want to make, and I'll try to submit it. And if not, I'll send it to you through Canvas.
Excellent.
Thank you
Okay,
so
one final point, and then I got to let you guys go. Okay, technobabble. I indicated it to a couple of you folks in the comment sections of your dialogue assignment. Technobabble is great. Sounds good in a script. It sounds realistic. Okay, especially military speak and science speak, right? But if you're going to do that, here's a word to the wise. Do a little research. Figure out what the lexicon is for the character who is demonstrating that vocabulary or that behavior, and make sure that you're using the proper phonetics, the proper spelling, that the references are in context, right? And I think somebody just in a line of dialogue was talking about two people on a radio, military types, I think, astronauts or something, which tend to be military people. And on a military radio, on a military frequency during an operation, nobody would ever say repeat if they wanted you to say the thing again that you just said. Repeat is a very specific command on a military radio, and it has nothing to do with say again what you just told me. They say again that last, okay? So that there's no ambiguity, okay? Because repeat means something very specific. And then there was another person who was using what sounded like old English elocution, the Queen's Old English. Okay. If your characters are going to speak that way, you might want to do a little research and find out what that's supposed to sound like. And then write accordingly. Because that will play into the sense of genuine dialogue that your audience perceives in your written work. Okay. And unfortunately now, or fortunately, I don't know, I think it depends on what side of the fence you're on. We as a media consumptive society now have heard a lot and seen a lot. And so we kind of know what things are. And if we hear something that sounds sort of correct, but we know it's not because we've heard it before and somewhere else, then I think maybe it might color your work a little or taint your audience's perception of your work. If you're going to have a character that speaks in Old English, just look into it and see what that sounds like, right? And then use that, just so that it rings true, right? And it's believable in every way. Because remember, we're transporting our audience, and the audience has to believe. They have to buy it, hook, line, and sinker, what you're telling them. And if you leave them any clues that are going to take them out of the moment and suspend the disbelief, that's when they get up to go to the bathroom and buy popcorn, or they might say, you know what, I'm not going to stick around for the end of this movie. I got to get up early in the morning. I'm just going to leave and go home, right? You want to keep them in their seat until the end of the movie and have them think to themselves, wow, was that 2 hours? That went by quick. What a great movie, So everything that we're doing is contributing to that sense. Entertain them, suspend the disbelief, make them believe in whatever world you have constructed for them, and then transport them for 2 hours. Okay. Don't discount the value of research in your writing. Actors do it, right? Like Elizabeth Shue going, and doing nursing for a period of time to prepare for a role as a nurse. Actors do it all the time. They immerse themselves in something, and they study it and they learn it until it becomes second nature and part of their delivery. So when they say something, it sounds like what that character would say because they've been living it for 6 months or so, right? So don't discount the value of research. Okay. That's it. Anybody got any questions, comments, critique, gossip?
Are we gonna have the week to set for the midterm, or?
This is week 6B right now. So next week we'll have review, and then your test is week 8. So yeah, next week is review. And if you want to do some workshopping, I'd love to workshop with you folks. Let me know what you want to look at in class and we can do that. Or we'll just study, or, you can study on your own, whatever you want to do. Okay. So that's all I got for you. If there's no questions, I'll see you folks next week. Thanks so much for your time and attention. Have a good afternoon and enjoy your weekend.